I refuse to host my friend's husband because he eats too much. Story. My friend has been married for a year now to her firefighter husband. She is the only one in the friend group that is married. I usually host dinners every couple of months, and we are going to do a late one for the holidays on Friday. I usually invite him, but money has gotten tight due to the holidays, and he eats so much. I understand why, but it always results in my having to double recipes, or I run out of food. So this time I told everyone that I wanted to just do a girls' night. This means my friend's husband is not invited. If he isn't there, there is enough food for everyone without double recipes. She called me up asking why I was doing a girls' night. I told her the truth that I can't afford to make double for dinner, and her husband eats a lot. She called me a jag-off, and now she is telling my friends why. Everyone is split, and no one is offering to help with the food bill. Am I wrong for doing that? Response 1. Is he insisting on more food? You also didn't need to tell her the real reason if you didn't want to, and you've probably made him feel crappy. TBI, if money is tight, maybe don't host dinners, or ask everyone to bring a dish. Then you have to pay for less yourself, and they can double up their own recipe. You're the a-hole, and should probably have just told the group it's getting expensive, and you are happy to host. But bringing dishes/contributing to the cost would help, instead of singling out one person and making them feel guilty for eating. But I understand times are tough and money is tight for everyone, so it can be really difficult. So I do feel for you in that sense. Reply 1. He eats 2 to 3 servings. He eats more than everyone else, so if I don't double it, some of the girls will be hungry if he gets his fill since he will eat it all. Another option is he is still hungry, which seems to be a no since that happened the first time and everyone was upset. Reply 2. He sounds like an extremely rude dinner guest. I wouldn't invite him to my home either. Reply 3. When I go spend time with friends who are tight on funds, I make sure to bring my own food or expect to pay for pizza or something. I'd never expect them to fund my meals, particularly if I knew I was a big eater. Reply 4. And friend and husband should have chipped in with a big dish of something and a bottle of wine. How do two people think that they're regularly going to dinner at someone's house and not contributing? Husband has no manners. But OP let it go on too long. In my opinion, the husband shouldn't have been there to begin with. Reply 5. Oh man, I had a weekend guest once. I made this nice pot roast for dinner and was gonna serve the leftovers for lunch the next day, which seemed reasonable since it was 3 of us and a baby. And he wasn't a bodybuilder or anything. Large framed, but an IT guy. He kept saying how good the meal was, and then he ate half of the roast in one sitting, you guys. I had to scramble to figure out lunch, and we're low-budget farm people who make everything from scratch and can't just drop everything and drive to the store. And he was paleo, so I had to dig through the freezer and think of a recipe. That was large enough. And I gotta say, it was a factor in not going out of my way to invite him again. He's still a good friend, but not every friend is a good house guest. Reply 6. I don't understand it. Half the damn roast? I will be hungry AF at someone's house just to avoid eating too much of their food like you. I budget my food carefully and can't just go get more, so I try to respect others' food budgets as well. As a teen, a few of my friends would come over and eat everything. My mom worked at Safeway. It's not like we had the big bucks for extra food. It meant we spent the last weeks of a month eating just rice if anything went wrong with the food, so I'd never put someone in that position. It just does not compute in my mind. It seems so opposite to basic common sense or manners to eat half of someone's roast or eat a ton of their food that I can't grasp why anyone would do that. Like, who the hell raised this man? Reply 7. Yes, I assume you're a woman because you were taught table manners and that it's ladylike to eat like a bird in public. Men, especially working class men, feel no shame about their appetites. I don't think they should starve at all, like women are supposed to. They should eat as much as they want, but they should also be taught to be cognizant of others in their households and in social situations. Response 2. Not the a-hole. 1. People saying you should have just lied. You shouldn't have had to. 2. When you say he eats a lot and it adds to the cost and things are tight, the right response of a decent person is, I didn't even think about it. How about we all chip in or bring something to help? It's not to get indignant and try to cause trouble within the group. You did nothing wrong in arranging a smaller party to manage costs. Your friend just sounds entitled and ridiculous. Reply 1. Yes. Why isn't potluck the answer? Reply 2. If they switch to potluck once, you might learn something. Either this guy brings something he thinks is reasonable, like a whole ham or whatever, and you learn it's merely unconscious behavior, or he shows up with a bag of ice or chips or cups or something and destroys everybody else's actual food, in which case you've learned he's pushing it more on purpose. But agreed, it's not a long-term solution. Reply 3. Yep, I've seen situations where people try and split food stuff, and there's like 4 people bringing a small dessert or cake or something incomplete or a snack, and when you try and micromanage and plan it properly, people are annoyed and become less participating in the event. Skip it, or you'll find they're a bit more distant. Should I say that's good in the long run? Lose friends that aren't that generous? Well, in today's economy, where humans are at a record high of loneliness, doesn't seem like you can afford to be super picky with friends, plus your pool of who you meet throughout your life. You're not always lucky enough to get a kind, generous friend who understands every angle of where you're coming from or is wholly considerate. Again, especially in a climate where individualism is thriving, people are taking entitlement and putting their foot down to extreme levels rather than using it appropriately. People will be all like, hey, can you bring paper towels when you come? No, and I don't need to justify myself. BC no is a complete answer. The fact that a majority of people are divided on whether she should have lied or not is already a testament that there are no laws for universal behavior. What one person might see as consideration, another person might see as a weakness, and vice versa. Reply 4. There is a tool called Splitwise that can at least help you call this out. Like if you made IDK pozole or something, you could put the receipt on splits the other people's bread or cups or chips or whatever gets deducted, then they see the net divided by the remaining people with their contribution factored in. It works pretty well. Reply 5. Haha, yeah, I have that downloaded. I tried using it for my friend's last cottage trip, and all my girlfriends are all up for it, but the guys just ignore that kind of stuff. They just like to live by the rules that one person takes care of it all, so there's no stress and no nitpicking about being cheap and then assume that someone else will get it another time. But the problem is, they don't take the time to rotate who hosts or takes care of what, and keeping track is a negative mentality. Response 3. Not the a-hole. It's weird to me that she questioned it being a girls' night. That seems self-explanatory, and sometimes you don't want to do couples things. Maybe you were blunt in how you handled it, I'm not sure, but she was way ruder to not acknowledge what you were saying and calling you names. My husband's best friend eats a ton and would totally clear us out at potlucks while not bringing anything to contribute. So I told my husband to either talk to him about manners or stop inviting him. People like this are super rude, expecting everyone else to accommodate them. Also, firefighters should know how to cook since they spend time at firehouses. The dude should be bringing a giant dish to share. Reply 1. I agree. I am the only single girl in my friendship group, and if anyone asks if can we have girls only at night, there is no pushback whatsoever. I don't like it when some people insist on always bringing their other half to everything. Thankfully, my friends are not like that. Reply 2. Some people are insecure and clingy. I used to regularly do beer and wings with a group of guys and invited a coworker who didn't really have any friends or get out much. He showed up with his girlfriend after I told him it was fine if she came every now and then, but this was mainly just a guy's thing. It wasn't a party thing either. Most guys had wives, kids, and everyone was home by 8:30. Have a couple of beers, be impolite and irreverent with each other in the way we are with no women around, and go home. Well, he told her, I said it was supposed to be a guy thing. I became public enemy number 1 in her eyes, and she hated me ever since. Reply 3 OP does say the friend is the only one who is married and does not mention any of the other relationship statuses. It could be that none of them are dating men currently, and since it's an all-girls group, it would be seen as a bit weird to suddenly set up a girls' night, because clearly that would be to just exclude the only man from the get-together. Regardless, I agree OP is not the a-hole, and that the friend, her husband, and even some of the other friends are being rude about this by taking the friend's side instead of OP's. Reply 4. If she's the only one that's married, then it's not weird at all for the group gatherings to be girls' nights like that. Plus, based on context, it seems like she's the only one bringing a +1 to these dinners, which definitely changes the vibe, even if they all get along. Unless hubby has been part of the core friend group for a while, he probably is seen as an interloper of sorts, even without the food issue. I know my husband never feels comfortable tagging along when I hang out with my all-girl friend group that I've known since grade school if he's going to be the only spouse. He and my friends like each other and get along, but he doesn't have the same shared history as us, so it's awkward. Reply 5. Totally this. I have a firefighter husband, and on many occasions we've discussed etiquette around his appetite. Usually, our solution is to have the first round of dinner at our place, then go out. This applies to when we're going to a party, nicer restaurants with small servings, and definitely a graciously hosted dinner. We also bring lots of good wine and an appetizer dessert to ensure we're invited back. Yes, I've had to think of all this before incorporating him into the friend group. And yes, he's aware of the need to read the room and perhaps be a bit hungry for a few hours until we can get home. We take hosting seriously and like to be extra generous ourselves. That said, I have an upper limit of hosting no more than 2 firefighters at a time. 3's a crowd. Response 4. If one of the guests is eating more than you consider affordable, why didn't you dish up the meal, or at least more expensive portions thereof, onto the plates before it gets to the dinner table, rather than serving everything family style? That would have allowed you to ensure everyone had a fair share and no one went without. Reply 1. He will be hungry if I do that, which seems to be a no since that has happened before and it causes drama. Reply 2. That sounds like his problem. The dinner party isn't for him and him alone to be satisfied at the end of. How insanely selfish of him and his wife to behave that way. I don't blame you, and you are not the a-hole. I don't invite people over for the same reason, or they end up eating my food, and I sit there hungry after doing all the work. My husband would always walk in after work with a friend and be like, "Oh, hey man, wanna stay? She's making dinner," as if I had enough. Ugh. Reply 3. Why is he allowed to tell you how much food you should make in your own home to specifically satisfy his appetite while screwing over everyone else? But you aren't allowed to say no to him coming over and treating you this rudely in your own home and selfishly devouring all the food you spent your own time and money on. Don't invite either of them again. It's obvious to me that they don't care about how you feel as long as they get free food from you. Not the a-hole. I would do the same thing. Reply 4. I made that same suggestion above. Does it cause drama if the human bottomless pit doesn't get filled up? That alone would be a reason to 86 his ass from the parties. Who the hell are these self-entitled a-holes that not only demand a mountain of food, but get totally rude if they aren't sated? If you are not filled up at the get-together, then drive your big ass to McDonald's and top off. Is it that hard to be polite? Reply 5. I have a feeling this man doesn't know how to read a room and would just ask for more food before anyone else was served. Or, if he was served last, he'd probably ask OP for more food, and there wouldn't be enough, and he'd complain about portion size. I may be wrong, but that's just how it comes off to me. Reply 6. He's either greedy and selfish to wolf down more before making sure everyone has had help, or he may have a poor mindset. If you grow up poor and food insecure, you scarf down what's in front of you as fast as you can and as much as you can because you don't know when you're going to get it again, and it's better to be overfull than hungry. Whenever there's a pizza party at my workplace, there always seem to be 2 types of people. A, those who take a slice or two and wait for others to get a share and loop back around under the assumption that there will still be leftovers. And B, people who take 3 or 4 slices at once who make sure they got full the first time around. Response 5. Not the a-hole. It only takes one to ruin it for others. If your other friends have noticed that he does that and no one has stepped up until you finally said something, then it's best you just canceled. No reason to go through your money if no one backs you up or offers to help remedy the situation. Your friend is the a-hole, though. She knows her husband eats a lot, per his own admission, but yet does nothing to help even it out for others. Get rid of that extra weight, no pun intended. Reply 1. So in your mind, it's okay to host a dinner, invite people, then get upset when one person eats more than everyone else, and then instead of talking to sort things out or figure a solution, you just exclude said person without a word as to why. That's some backstabby stuff right there. Reply 2, she said girls' night. A friend asked why, which in and of itself is weird. OP answered honestly. She isn't obligated to explain why she's not inviting a rude guest back to her home. Not sure you understand backstabbing. Reply 3, rude guest? He just ate more than others. He never even knew it was an issue. And clearly, a girls' night is odd, since the friend asked why. That's not weird at all. And it's backstabbing because she is literally avoiding a perceived issue by just excluding one person from taking part in gatherings instead of talking. Reply 4. Eating 3 plates of food before anyone else has had a chance to have seconds is rude AF. That's what OP said he did. And if you know you eat a lot, bring something to contribute. Response 6. My husband can be a huge eater, but he takes his first serving and then waits until everyone else has their fill and will then polish off whatever is left. I think a lot of people are missing the point. Sounds like you are making a normal amount of food, but he sounds like a rude guest, not the a-hole. Reply 1. Yeah, my husband is a very tall guy and eats a lot. We buy a 5-pack of brats for dinner sometimes. We have 4 kids, but they are all young. The oldest is 6 and isn't a big eater for her age. Others are newborn, 2 and 4. 6 months ago, 5 brats meant 2 for him, 1.5 for me, and half for each kid. They are all eating more now, and instead of half a brat each, it's mostly been a whole brat. My husband and I both scaled back to 1 each without complaint. He just eats more carbs or gets something left over from the fridge to pad it. We are probably going to start cooking 2 packs and planning on leftovers. Reply 2. I hope he doesn't do this every time, instead of asking if anyone would like to share what's left. I have a teenage boy, but he knows to ask if anyone else would like to share the last piece of food or if can he have it for himself. Reply 3. My boys are both big eaters, and my 13-yo is currently going through that teen growth spurt hollow leg situation. I've taught them to do pretty much what your husband does, unless they're at a buffet that is being continuously refreshed. They know that they can get food later, and I will usually make sure they have snacks like fruit and a meat bar before going to someone's house. And if we are going to someone's house, we always offer to bring something. If I found out my boys were behaving like that husband, we would be having a very serious talk. I feel bad for OP. I don't think she did anything wrong. Her friend is entitled and has a boorish husband. There's nothing wrong with being a big eater, but you are responsible for managing your appetite in a way that is considerate of others, including your host. I spend a lot on food because of my kids, so I sympathize with people who are trying to stick to a grocery budget. It gets crazy fast, especially if you are serving more celebratory food. I don't cook a lot of meat at home, but I made skirt steak for Christmas Eve. Since we had the grandparents over and my 3 guys were all eating, I got almost 5 pounds of skirt steak and it was $86. That's just for the steak, and it was almost all eaten that night. Response 7. Not the a-hole. You could have given a different reason like, I just want it to be us, but your friend pressured you into overextending yourself even after you communicated the financial strain. You were nice enough to invite them and host them regularly. She's also the only one with a man, so I don't think a girl's night is a ridiculous idea. Stand your ground. She's being immature. Reply 1. Not the a-hole. She shouldn't have to give a different reason. I'm shocked your friends are split. Ridiculous. Reply 2. I agree. Totally shouldn't have to, but due to dealing with unreasonable people like this, I find it's easier to not be completely transparent. Some people just look to be offended. Response 8. Not the a-hole, and your friends are the a-holes. They know you're tight on money, but still want to host a dinner, yet don't offer any money. Screw them. Yes, your answer came off as insensitive, but real friends are allowed to tell the truth without getting butthurt. Reply 1. I have an ex who ate a lot, double sometimes triple what the average person eats. He never ate as much if we went to dinner at other people's, and he always offered to pay his share. If someone had told him they were tight on cash and couldn't afford to invite him for dinner, he would both understand and either get his own dinner or offer to help pay so he could still take part. No one should ever be angry at someone else for not having the ability to host them. Response 9. I think your friend was a dick for turning around and telling everyone something that was probably hard to disclose. To everyone saying you shouldn't host if you can't afford that is just silly. OP has a life and is trying to make the most out of it. They can afford it. By not inviting someone who eats so much, she has to make double. Come on. Life is tough for so many people these days. Should everyone just hide inside and not try to do anything that makes their lives just a little better? Reply 1. OP doesn't sound like the type to care that she had to tell her friend the reason. Highly doubt it was hard for her to disclose that. Some people just don't have the skill set to solve problems diplomatically. Reply 2. You must be one of the world's top psychiatrists or profilers if you could figure out that much about OP from this post. Response 10. Sounds like it is time for someone else to host, or just invite those friends that aren't causing you grief. Not the a-hole. Further, there's nothing wrong with wanting a girls' night anyway. Reply 1. Exactly. Why aren't they rotating? Why is it all falling on OP? Response 11. I absolutely believe you. My husband has 3 nephews who act like they've never been fed at every family gathering. They shove their way in front of everyone once the food is all out, and after they have gone through, it looks like a swarm of locusts has decimated every dish. After a few of those incidents, I quietly went around to the moms with small kids, letting them know the food was ready so that they could make plates for their little ones first. Then I would go to the older people and let them know to go get their food. This worked really well and ensured that everyone had a fair shot of getting a little bit of everything. Every once in a while, the boys would realize that people were getting in line, and I would stop them and let them know that we were going in groups and that their turn was coming up soon, and I would let them know. These were not young kids either, and far too old to not be aware of how selfish, gluttonous their behavior was. It might have been rude to say why the firefighter wasn't invited, as she could have just stuck with the girls' night reasoning, or just turn it into a potluck like others have suggested. If your friend and her husband don't bring much to the potluck, then you could always pull the ladies first card, and he can go last and have whatever's left over. Reply 1. The only issue I have is the idea that after everyone has gotten a plate, he can have whatever's left. What if someone else also wants a little more, but there's nothing left because he took the remaining 4 servings? Reply 2. I agree that in a normal social situation, the last person in line should never assume that they can clear out the remaining food as someone else might need more. However, in this situation, everyone knows that the firefighter is going to take far more than his fair share. So if they go first, then they will most likely take a bit more, knowing that they only have one opportunity to get enough food. Response 12. Everyone sucks here. There's nothing wrong with hosting a girls' night only, and I don't see why your friend would even question this. They should also pitch in and help out. I'm the chef for my family and friends, and once things get too expensive, I ask for people to pitch in, and they do it. Honestly, I find it hard to believe one person puts you that much over budget. Is he eating the equivalent of 3 people? I could see him eating double portions, but if one person eating double portions is too much, I doubt you were making enough food anyway. I think it's rude to blame one person for all this, when really, I think the problem is you either need to ask your friends to pitch in or make something more affordable. Reply 1 BS. OP is serving a meal for free. They are not at fault and not the a-hole. Some people need to learn manners, and here is the big one. Stop freaking eating. Have a meal, be hungry, go home and order something. Don't gorge at people's houses like some fat, out-of-control a-hole. It was an invite out, not an invite to a trough. You all are disgusting if you think you are entitled to keep eating, overeating. Reply 2. I used to have 4 kids of preteen and teen ages. They were healthy eaters, especially my eldest. He was legendary. We were often invited for meals at people's homes. They knew the drill. They politely and appreciatively ate what was offered. Enjoyable and meaningful fellowship ensued. Then we all expressed our thanks, buckled into our car, and drove to the nearest establishment where they could fill up. Pizza, burgers, chicken, whatever it took to fuel those amazing metabolisms. Reply 3. Actually, as someone who hosts a free dinner for a group of friends weekly, this is 100% a real problem that can crop up. There are people who show up with extra people, or kids. There are people who eat 3x as much as the rest and think nothing of it. My husband will not rein in his friends or make them RSVP. My husband and his friends are a different issue here. But suffice to say, when I anticipate a few choice individuals attending, I prepare extra food, which can easily mean making 2 to 3 times more for the group. When the individuals I anticipate flake, a meal that normally has no leftovers is suddenly far too much. Or there is the hosting nightmare of them showing up unannounced, and there isn't even enough for seconds or other guests. It is a maddening and expensive problem to deal with. Not the a-hole. I am so sorry your friend and her husband are such rude, entitled people who abuse your generosity. Response 13. Why did you have to give that explanation? Girls' night was reason enough. It's like you deliberately ignited the situation. Reply 1. It sounds like she told the truth after her friend pried. The friend should never have asked, because the host has the right to host however she chooses to host. It's her invitation. What it sounds like is the OP had to get that off her chest. And finally, tell the friend, especially because she has been forced to be uncomfortable and worried at her own event that she will run out of food and end up being a terrible hostess, all because she needs to either double the recipe, thereby spending way more money to feed someone else's husband, or keep the amount she has and know someone will not be fed. That alone is potentially anxiety-inducing. Once again, just to worry about someone else's husband's appetite all night, because she isn't worried about the girls. She knows they will take an appropriate amount of food and be courteous and aware of the other guests. The OP's friend is a little crap too, because she knows good and well that she has experienced the same problem at home, watching him eating up everything, and still didn't care enough to feed his ass before leaving home, before he goes and abuses someone else's kindness.